You were out scooping, weren't you?
Sharpening the shell.
All right, everyone, welcome to the North Platte City Council meeting here on Tuesday, January 17th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. Of course, we're in our city council chambers. Calling the meeting officially to order, we have an invocation by Pastor Von Brook. You get close?
You get closer every time.
Thank you.
Well, let's pray. Jesus, we thank you for what you're doing in North Platte, and we thank you for a group of council members and a mayor whose heart is set on stewarding our town in a direction that's better for people who call North Platte home. We pray for continued blessings of knowledge, wisdom, and discernment over our city leaders as they move through tonight's agenda and make decisions and choices that will bring goodness and favor to our town. We pray for continued health and wellness upon each leader tonight. Pray all these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Roll call, please, Angie.
Nisley?
Here.
Tryon? Here. Bowles?
Here.
Lucas?
Here.
Gary?
Here.
Sanders?
Here.
Reaper?
Here.
Here. Thank you. A current copy of the Open Meetings Act of the State of Nebraska is posted on the wall at the back of the council chambers. Meeting procedure. The public may address specific agenda items at the pleasure of the mayor. If recognized by the mayor, please identify yourself by stating your name and address. Please address the council through the mayor and limit your remarks. We respect our city employees and request that any complaints or criticisms of employees not be aired in a public meeting. Concerns about employees should be brought to the attention of the city administrator or the mayor. Individuals in violation will be declared out of order. We don't have any awards and accolades tonight. Consent agenda. All matters under consent agenda are considered by the city council to be routine, will be enacted by one motion. Any city council member may, however, remove an item from consent by request. Item number 1, approve the minutes of January 3, 2023. Item number 2, place on file the treasurer's report for December 2023. Item number 3, approve the application by GL Concepts LLC DBA Good Life on the Bricks for a special designated license on February 1, 2023 from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the D&N Event Center, 501 East Walker Road for the Buffalo Bill Farm and Ranch Expo. Number 4, approve request from Adams Bank and Trust, Equitable Bank, First Interstate Bank, First National Bank, North Platte, First State Bank, Hershey State Bank, Nebraska Land Bank, Sand Hills State Bank, Union Bank and Trust, Wells Fargo Bank, NA, and Western Nebraska Bank to be designated as depository banks for city funds for 2023. I don't think I left out any banks.
I do see on number 2, I made a typo. It should be December 2022 report.
Oh, okay. 2022, not 2023 on number 2.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Reeker, second by Nisley. Calling the question on the consent agenda.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, hold on.
I'm simply just going to request to abstain from number 4 just to a potential appearance of any conflict of interest.
Okay. Let the record show Mr. Lucas is abstained from number 4. Calling the question on the consent agenda. Consent agenda is passed. Item number 5. Third reading and action on ordinance number 4114 to add a section entitled Political Subdivision Construction Alternatives Act to Title III, Chapter 34, Section 44 of the City of North Platte Code of Ordinances. Lane, would you read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 4114, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, to amend the code of the city of North Platte by adding a section entitled Political Subdivision Construction Alternatives Act to Title III, Chapter 34 of the official city code, to provide that this ordinance will be made a part of the code of the city of North Platte as Section 34.44 of the official city code, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, providing for the effective date and publication thereof in pamphlet form.
Thank you.
I move to adopt ordinance number 4114 to amend the City of North Platte Code of Ordinances by adding a section entitled Political Subdivision Construction Alternatives Act to Title III, Chapter 34, Section 44, as presented in the council materials on third reading.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Lucas. Any discussion on item number 5?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Reeker.
I have a question. As I reread this under the executive summary, can Lane, maybe, can you explain to me what a construction management at-risk contract is?
Construction management at risk. Maybe a Brent, can you talk on that a little bit?
Good evening, council, mayor. The construction manager at risk is a person that's hired to manage the project, and they will usually do bidding out of the parts of the project. So they kind of break the project up into parts, and then will bid the pieces out as the representative for the owner. And usually the construction manager at risk gets paid a percentage of the job or a fixed fee.
Okay, and that's kind of what I thought to a certain extent, Brent. So then, how does that work with a design-build contract? If
They're
you-
different. A design build, you hire a team
Right,
that designs it and builds it. And you could have things that look like a construction manager at risk in the build part of a design build, meaning if you hire XYZ contractor, they still might hire a plumber. They still might hire an electrician. They might not have all of the pieces. What I would say it'd look more like a general contractor with an engineer architect together to provide it's more of a turnkey type of approach. With the design build, you tell them what you want,
Right.
you come up with a cost, they will give you the end project all done. Whereas a construction manager at risk, the owner has a contract with a design professional, and they'll have a contract with the construction manager at risk. And so there's more connection points between the owner with that. And then the construction manager at risk will have the responsibility of getting all of the trades put together to get the project done.
so in essence, I guess in my terminology, he would almost act as a general contractor.
Yeah, yes, and with more administrative, yeah, there's a lot of similarities with that, correct. But they don't have the overall oversight. They pass a lot of the responsibilities to each of the trades because they're not doing the work. So it's kind of pulling out, the project superintendent would be working for the city in that type of scenario, if that makes sense.
Hey, Brent, would you elaborate on the at-risk portion of that discussion? Because as I'm familiar with this process, when you go manager at risk, you decide on the project. Up front, a cost is decided upon, whatever that cost may be. and
There's a
agreed-
guaranteed maximum.
Right, and agreed to by the owner. And then the at-risk portion is the portion where the entity he's talking about then has to meet that price. So there can be no add-ons or exceptions. That's the at-risk component, as I understand it.
That's
But please
correct.
correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, there's also the construction manager advisor, which is a different rabbit trail, which we're not talking about here. But the at-risk, part of the negotiation is you come up to a guaranteed maximum price. And that's what you have to hit for your target. And then their job is to get all the subs and everything to make that price work. So it's a little bit inverted compared, the main thing you get into is time. Whereas if you do the design, bid, build, it linear hits out. Whereas you do the construction manager at risk, it starts compressing some of the schedule. So that's where in the ordinance and the state statute is, one, you have to get approval of the council 30 days before you even want to try to do it. So you have to get your all's approval to even consider using that method first. And then there's quite a few different things, and you have to go through the criteria of it has to save the community time or money or have a particular unique construction method that you need to use at. So there's quite a few checks that you need to make, and then everybody here around the table has to agree that that all fits those.
And I think I understand that part. I'm really confused, I guess, at construction management at risk, then, based on your description. So as I understand this, this project would not be completely designed at the outset.
That is frequently, I think you're correct. Frequently, the construction manager at risk will show up early in the process. You won't be bidding the project yet. You would have your professional team on, you start scoping it. Where it works the best time frame wise is if you have a preliminary schematic design, then you bring on your construction manager at risk and say, this is what we're looking at. How can we save money? How can we save time and still get the project done? So they have input on the design, not doing the design, but they'll have input to try to get the fastest path to get the project done, if that makes sense.
And I think I understand that aspect. I guess I'm kind of confused though still. Okay, if this project is not designed and we have a maximum dollar amount that we can't exceed, and we start the construction early on, thinking that we're going to be able to meet our target at risk maximum cost, and as we get farther into the project, we realize that our bids are coming in higher than we had anticipated. How do we shorten up the cost of the project in midstream without compromising the value of the project?
And that's a good question, and there's inherent risks whichever way you go. Because even with the general contractor route, you can still have issues depending on how they internally in-house do things, depending on the length of the project, because they might not have everything right. Like right now, there's equipment issues that you run into that you can't get a price until they ship it 2 years from now. And so, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but a lot of those things, they kind of work themselves out through the project. There's been a lot of projects done that way. I mean, Great Plains, the hospital, they built their project that way. There are several different, it's used more, I would say, on the private side, on larger architectural projects is what I've seen them typically used on.
Well, on the private side, as a private owner, I would have the flexibility of saying, well, yeah, we're gonna meet our maximum dollar figure, but I'm okay with that because it is my project. In the case of a government project, how do you go over your maximum amount that you've targeted without some major types of interventions by the council or?
Well, I can speak to how Great Plains uses it because I've been involved in it. So the process starts with architectural drawings, and the at-risk entity, in this case the contractor, looks at the drawings, gets bids from all their subs and everything, and says, okay, we believe whatever the price is, we believe we can build it for this price. Is that acceptable to you, owner? The owner works with the architect, says, is that an acceptable number? Based on the estimates that have gone into the drawings. And if it's an acceptable number on the owner's part, then the contract says, okay, builder, you have X number of dollars to build this. If you go over, you have to pay that money. I mean, that's why they're at risk. So they're on the hook for the overage, if there is overage, in the typical contract.
Am I understanding correctly, Brandon, then that the process starts with architectural drawings?
Once they exist, that's usually when the at-risk contractor is involved in those that I've been involved in. Yes, that's correct.
So those subs have definitive plans that they're bidding on?
Yeah,
Okay,
for the most part, anyway.
that would make some sense because the sub should be able to give a pretty spot-on price for what the work he's gonna be doing.
Correct.
Okay, that answered that, okay.
Okay. Yeah. And I don't know that the city of North Platte, if we'll ever opt to do something this way, but I would imagine that if we do, we'll be in a position where we'll have plans. You know, we'll know what we need to build.
That's the only way it would seem to me like it could work.
Yeah,
mean,
I agree.
If I was a contractor, there's no way I'm gonna give you a price until I know what I'm gonna provide you.
Exactly.
And so, okay, all right. The other question that I have, and I can't see it right now, says it has to provide either cost savings or shorter construction time, I think somewhere in here,
Correct.
probably overlooking it, but.
Yeah, that's right out of
here
the
it
state
is,
statute.
Savings
Yeah.
and cost or time. if you don't have a defined set of plans, especially in a design build, how can you assure that you're getting cost savings?
Well, you'd still have some competitive prices. That's where you'd have to have a considerable amount of research put in behind. In my mind, this is a tool that, for me, I'm more cautious with wanting to even attempt it. I'd have to really think through what things we'd want that would be for our advantage. So I would have to think through a lot more hypothetical scenarios to think of a case that we would need to execute it in this manner to save time or money. The other part is, it would be more of a specialty build type of thing. I don't know exactly what that scenario might be, but that would be the third consideration if there's something very unique that we need to have XYZ do it, and there's only 4 of them in the United States or something like that, that it would be something very specialized, that would be the other trigger. But I agree. I mean, I would need, for what I typically see, there's not a very many cases that I would consider that for. So just from my desk, I haven't seen very many, but this is a tool that we can keep, and it doesn't take any space in the garage. So, and everybody has to agree to use it when the time comes, so,
Okay, thank you, Brent.
if it comes.
Other questions, thoughts?
I guess and I don't know anything about this construction business, but, so we've got design build and then we have a design bid build. So if you go in one direction and you see, oh, wait a minute, maybe we need to go this way, can we shift gears in the middle of the stream?
I don't see any reason why we couldn't. The way that we do things right now on the projects that we do design, bid, build. That's the way that when we bring asphalt projects, we design it, we bid it, and then come get approval, with a contract. That's the normal way that you guys see it. If we do design bid or design build, we have to come before you at least 30 days before we even advertise. So we have to have permission from you and then 30 days of advertising after permission. And I think if we wanted to change our mind, we could, but I think we'd be significantly down. I don't know. I don't think I'd want to go that route without a very strong case to even consider it, because it's unique, and we have to have all of our ducks in a row to even approach the council to discuss it. So I think we'd have to have a very unique, strong case that I'd feel strongly that that's the best interest of the community. And so
Probably not.
I don't think we'd probably change back and forth, because we'd lose time if we lost 30, 60 days or longer. That would be the main negative. I'd want to have that figured out before we brought it to you all.
Thank you.
Calling the question on number 5, please. Number 5 is passed. Number 6, approve and authorize mayor to sign agreement with Oak Creek Engineering for bridge inspections.
I move to approve and authorize mayor to sign agreement with Oak Creek Engineering for bridge inspections.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Flanders. Any discussion on item number 6? Mark?
Mr. Mayor, how many bridge inspection companies,
I'm sorry, I was just.
how many,
Thank
how
you.
many bridge inspection companies are there? How many bid? Yeah.
Go ahead, Brent.
Councilman Woods, on what we've done in the past, there's one in Scottsbluff that we've utilized in the past, and we changed it's probably 8 years ago that we changed to Oak Creek Engineering, and they're out of the Kearney area. And then probably the next would be Omaha, maybe Lincoln area as far as location. And their price, I believe, is about $400 a bridge for inspection.
Yeah.
And just as an idea, from Omaha, if you had a bridge engineer come out, they're probably $200 an hour. So they'd be about $1,600 to drive here and go home, plus mileage. So it'd be about $2,000 just to have them show up. And that doesn't count the inspection. So I mean, that's ballpark what we'd be looking at. And so we've utilized them for multiple years in a row, and from our observation, they've been responsive and they're reasonably priced for what we've seen in the industry anyway.
Well, that makes sense. If they're the closest, that,
It makes
make
a
a big difference
Yeah,
in the
absolutely.
price, yeah.
And they have to know what they're doing, of course,
Well,
and
yeah.
be close and be reasonable price, and they seem to check the boxes with that, and we've had good experience with them.
Well, I assume that
So-
part, that you hired
So, yes.
a reputable company. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Other thoughts or questions on number 6? Calling the question on number 6, please. Number 6 is passed. Number 7. You ready for this, Lane? Okay. Action on ordinance number 4107 to create street improvement district number 350 Sunset Drive from Bear Avenue to Lakeview Boulevard. Street improvement district number 351 Poplar Street from 12th Street to South Cody Park Road. Street improvement district number 352 9th Street from Cottonwood Street to Poplar Street. Street improvement district number 353 8th Street from Poplar Street to Roosevelt Avenue. Street improvement district number 354 Cottonwood Street from Phillip Avenue to Francis Street and from Easy Street west approximately 350 feet. Street improvement district number 355 Poplar Street from Phillip Avenue to Francis Street. Street improvement district number 356 Second Street from Jeffers Street to Grant Avenue and from Grant Avenue from Second Street to Third Street. Street improvement district number 357 Third Street from Willow Street to Vine Street and Jeffers Street to Tabor Street. Lane, would you read the ordinance, which is going to sound very familiar to what I just read?
Actually, the ordinance is a lot less.
Oh, well, darn it all.
I win, I'm just gonna put it that way. Ordinance number 4107, an ordinance creating street improvement districts numbers 350, 351, 352, 353, 354, 355, 356, and 357 in the city of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, and describing the various streets in said street improvement districts and improvements to be constructed therein.
You did get off kind of easy on that one.
Yep.
The motion's even easier.
Okay.
I move to adopt ordinance number 4107 to create street improvement district numbers 350 to 357 as presented in council materials on first reading.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Reeker. Discussion on item number 7.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Lucas, you have the floor.
I was wondering if I could ask Mr. Berkland if any of these contain any elements over more than just overlaying. Like, for example, I was trying to remember if on Phillip we still had some dips in the road around Poplar, and so I was just curious if any of these tackle any issues other than just overlay improvement.
Councilman Lucas, there is a little bit, it's predominantly asphalt overlay. We have the, kind of look at it as a spider web, or the string on the sweater that you keep pulling and it keeps, when you start looking. But we do have some concrete repair on here on some of the intersection, and some of the asphalt repair at some of the intersections, specifically along the north side of the high school as you go east. We looked at doing some repair along those intersections. But we have water valves, manholes. We're also looking at East 3rd Street, I guess, right here next to the City Hall. If you look at the south side there, that's part of it. And then the crosswalk over on the south side of the county courthouse building. That crosswalk going east to Wells Fargo needs some work. And so there's a few spot areas that we're trying to tackle also, but I would say it's probably 90% asphalt and 10% would be some concrete repairs at some of these intersections.
Oh, great, thank you.
Hold on. Donna, you have the floor.
So on Walker Road, will that be widened?
No.
at all?
Walker Road is just a 2-inch mill and fill, and with some patching along there as well.
Thank you.
Other questions? Oh, Brad. That's Brent. Brad.
Brent, is there any Do we gain anything if we waive the 3 readings? Are you good with going through all 3?
If we waive the 3 readings, it would allow us to go to advertise quicker. So it would help, but I would defer to you. I prefer it, I guess, in that respect, just because of where we're at right now in the middle of January. We need 30 days, advertisement time. So from whenever it's approved, we need to add 30 days. And so the sooner we could get it done, the better, I guess, as far as trying to get contractors online.
Mayor.
schedule-wise.
I move to waive the 3 readings.
Second.
Okay, we have an amendment to waive the 3 readings on item number 7. Motion by Garrick, second by Reeker. Do we have any discussion on that amendment?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr.
Oh,
Reeker?
I'm sorry,
Oh,
go ahead.
please.
Well, the only reason that I even thought about that is, I was listening to some programs today as I was traveling, and there's some speculation that the price of oil may be trending, beginning a pretty high trend upwards. And, it may make some sense since asphalt is directly derived from oil. We take advantage of maybe a lower price right now.
Okay. Mr. Lucas?
I just wanted to make sure there's no technical issues with amending your own motion, is there? If so, I'm happy to make that amendment.
No, because we're going to vote on the amendment, but,
Okay, perfect.
okay, any other questions on the amendment? Okay, calling the question on the amendment, which is to waive the 3 readings. Okay, the amendment has passed, so now we're back to the original agenda item, number 7, which is all these streets. If approved, this would be the only reading. Any further discussion? Item number 7 is amended. Seeing none, calling the question on item number 7 as amended, which this would be the only reading of. Item number 7 is passed as amended in 1 reading. Thank you, everyone. Item number 8, action on ordinance number 4112 to create street improvement district number 358 to provide subgrade stabilization and maintenance on Commerce Drive from Newberry Access Road east approximately 1,500 feet to the dead end.
I move to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance. Oh, sorry. My apologies.
Ordinance number 4112, an ordinance creating street improvement district number 358 in the city of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, and describing the various streets in said street improvement district and improvements to be constructed therein.
Thank you.
It's on the wrong one anyway, so.
Okay.
I move to adopt ordinance number 4112 to create street improvement district number 358 as presented in council materials on first reading.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Reeker. Do we have any discussion on item number 8? Mr. Lucas, go ahead.
I was just wondering if we had any kind of a ballpark range on the expense associated with this.
Good question.
What we have identified, we're probably, at this point, we're probably in the 200,000 to 300,000 range. What we have going on, Commerce is over by Love's, and there's high groundwater and sand, and with the amount of trucks going over there, it's kind of creating, the easiest way to describe it is quicksand is being created. If you vibrate sand in water, then it becomes less stable. So the subgrade stabilization is an epoxy injection, a product that you insert from the top, which then locks everything together in water and sand, and so that it creates a more stable area. And there's a couple areas that are worse over there, but there's a lot of trucks that go through that area that bounce and shake through there, and that's what's causing the subgrade to become not stable. So, and I guess a thought along those lines also, the epoxy system is fuel oil-based consideration as well, and they have talked about a price raise coming with that as well. So if the council would be favorable to considering and waiving the 3 readings, we could move this along quicker as well for cost savings consideration. So
Continue with questions. Yeah. And so in a case like this where you've got private business who's creating probably heavier than normal use on something like this, is this clearly city responsibility? Is there, should it be considered for collaborative expense, or is it collaborative expense, or how does that work in this type of situation?
I think theoretically you can do a district and assign costs repeatedly, but there's political considerations with that. I would say normally we haven't, as far as looking at some other heavily used roads, whether it's East Phillip, B Street,
Right.
other arterial streets in town. I don't think that's been the process that's been applied, I guess, uniformly. I don't think it's been approached that way.
You know, it wasn't that long ago that I know there was, I can't remember if it was quality growth funds or there was a project out there with some of the infrastructure. And, you know, this hasn't been that many years ago that this was installed, correct?
It's about, I think it's probably in the 12 or 13 years.
Okay.
It's more than a decade. I'm pretty sure. It was the late 2000s, so we're probably 13, 14 years.
Yeah. Well, and I realize obviously there's a tremendous amount of business activity pulled off the interstate to that area. I'm not trying to pick on anybody by any means, but I do think we should keep our attention to if there's situations where something is moving at a rapidly faster pace than normal or than others of town, those things probably continue to be looked at, in my opinion. So, thank you.
Brent, did we do the design on that initially?
There was a geotech firm that had some of the preliminary recommendations for the subgrade in there, as far as the subgrade underneath the paving, which is what we're having the issues with right now.
Well, 12 or 13 years is quite a long time, but I'm wondering if they have any responsibility here.
That's a good question. I mean, it'd be beyond the statute of, limitations. I mean, if you look at the 7-year type of time frame, and there's probably a lot of changing site conditions that might start getting pointed at that point, but there's just a lot of variables, so.
Mr. Woods?
Well, if I like your idea, Ty, but if I was Love's, I think I would argue that whoever designed the road, they knew what it was going to be used for. I mean, if there's heavy truck traffic, shouldn't be a surprise. And I guess I would argue that the fault would be with the designer for not having done this originally when it was built. And as much as I hate to say that, but, it's just something to consider.
And it's, some of the part of, the street maintenance, because we have other areas of town, East Phillip, that we've replaced multiple times and things like that. So some of it comes with the nature of, unfortunately, owning a street, as the city, and those parts that go with it as well. So, I mean, you get into the design, you also get in, did the construction follow the design? I mean, there's quite a few different variables that you have in that as well, so,
And we do live on a large river.
yes. And we have unusual spots that sometimes you get the infamous buffalo wallow that you see. There's certain areas that are just weak. And so, yeah, absolutely.
It's a messy affair.
Yeah, the river bottom has its issues, so.
Other questions? Mr. Rieger?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we amend the motion to waive the 3 readings.
A second.
Motion by Rieger, second by Flanders to waive the 3 readings on item number 8. Any discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, calling the question on the amendment to waive the 3 readings for item number 8, please. The amendment is passed. We'll now consider item number 8 as amended, which would be passed in a single reading if approved by the council. Do we have any further discussion on item number 8 as amended? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 8, please. Item number 8 is passed on one reading. Thank you very much, everyone. Item number 9. Adopt a resolution approving claim and authorizing the issuance of one warrant to Midlands Contracting, Inc. in the amount of $170,524.35 to pay approved claim and referring to and incorporating the terms and conditions of ordinance number 3874 relating to warrant financing passed and approved on May 21, 2013.
I move to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of one warrant as presented in the materials.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Vols. Any discussion on item number 9? Calling the question on item number 9, please. Item number 9 is passed. Thank you very much. Now we have a public hearing to consider action on application for $1 million to assist the City of North Platte in creating a rural workforce housing land development program and authorize the mayor to sign, submit, and execute all related documents. This is a public hearing, and we will declare the public hearing open at this time. If anyone would like to speak on this subject. Judy, you want to tell us what we're doing here real quick? Nobody got up, so you get to be first.
So this is a grant fund that is authorized through the Nebraska Department of Economic Development. And what this is, you've all heard about land banks. And so I would say that this is extremely similar to a land bank. And so what this grant fund would do is help the City of North Platte take properties that are back on taxes, are vacant. The ones you would focus on are vacant properties, properties that have code compliance issues, properties that are falling down. And when you drive across town, if you go, you can see houses all over town that have been neglected, that are vacant. And I want to stress that vacant is the top priority there. What this would allow the city to do would be able to, if there's an absentee property owner, for example, the city would be able to go in there, look at the property, secure legal title on the property, demolish the building, and then take that property, which now has access to city services. You know, it's got a paved street, it's got water, sewer, everything right there. And now we have this piece of property that we can then put up for sale for someone to develop a new house on that property, or a duplex, or whatever the zoning may be of that property. And then you can get a property up and going for affordable housing. And this would be what we would do with this $1 million.
Thank you.
Not good enough?
So far, so good. We reserve the right to ask you more questions later.
Okay, perfect.
Anyone else like to speak on this subject?
Gary Pearson, President, North Platte Chamber and Development Corporation, 502 South Dewey. Mr. Mayor, City Council, the Chamber and Development Corporation is on record strongly supporting this. Our board has endorsed the idea of us being a support partner. One of the requirements in the grant application asks that a 501c nonprofit organization be a supporting partner that's had experience with rural workforce housing funds. We've had 2 different programs where we've tapped into that fund and been with good success in the community, bringing a lot of new workforce housing into the community. I want to compliment the city staff for the thoroughness they did in the planning of this and the research that went into it, complementing the 2018 housing study that was done by the city and the county. And then some support organizations on that identified a lot of these properties. It's a real problem in North Platte, as the study bore out. Any kind of windshield tour in certain neighborhoods certainly bears it out as well. And I think it's a logical way to address a lot of this. I think part of the problem in the past with getting it addressed has always been money and funding. And so this type of program is designed specifically for that purpose. The legislature was very supportive in putting a lot more dollars towards affordable housing projects, and when you look at the cost of infrastructure in today's world, this certainly minimizes some of those costs and being able to bring additional housing. Plus, the improvement in the neighborhood would be great. And all of those specific neighborhoods that have been identified in the application. So again, just would strongly support it, and our board of directors is on record in doing so.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on this subject?
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about an important subject. My name is Eric Seacrest. I'm the Executive Director of Mid-Nebraska Community Foundation. I've been in this position for 21 years, and almost since the first month of that wonderful job, housing has been a concern. I work with pretty much every nonprofit in town. Housing issues come up in education, in healthcare, and certainly community development, and virtually all the human service agencies. They've been documented very well in the most recent housing study, and which emphasized the need for the city working with many other partners to take a more active role. It's well documented that we have a lot of abandoned, uninhabitable, and dilapidated homes in North Platte. Let's consider how this happens. It happens by neglect. Often that neglect is caused by a set of circumstances of life. People die. They get infirmed. They can't take care of things. They're poor. And in many cases, this neglect happened over decades, and very little was done. And it's also complicated by many cases where the worn out property get transferred to an heir who doesn't even live here, doesn't even care about this community. Abandoned, uninhabitable, and dilapidated houses also happen by intentional neglect. How does this happen? Virtually all of these properties have little or no market value when you consider their condition. Matter of fact, it may be a negative value to clean it up, to market it. It's human interest. You know, what's in it? Why do anything? So it sits there on the tax rolls and builds up delinquent taxes. Sometimes these uninhabited or dilapidated places get used for cheap storage. Might as well do something with it. And even worse, sometimes these properties become drug houses. Problem properties with little or no market value virtually never resolve themselves. How is it going to get resolved? Well, nobody does anything. They just sit there. And that's what's happened in this community. Solving problem properties typically requires assistance from both government and nonprofit organizations such as this proposal. Why does it matter? Why do abandoned, uninhabitable, and dilapidated houses matter? Why is this so important? It's important for lots of reasons. Problem properties like this harm entire neighborhoods, and they harm the people who live in these neighborhoods. I mean, who really wants to live next to any of these properties? You want to live next to an abandoned property or a terribly dilapidated piece of real estate? And it's no secret that this community needs housing. It's a top community priority. The community and its residents have made substantial public investment into every single housing lot in this city, in the shape of roads, electrical lines, water pipes, sanitary sewers, and storm sewers. This public investment is basically wasted when it comes to the problem properties. Nobody's living there. They have hardly any assessed value. It's just a waste. And the good thing about this proposal is there are potential cost savings, because typically it is cheaper to redevelop housing on an existing lot that has public investment in infrastructure than it is to build a new house on green grass where there's no public infrastructure. This proposal would greatly benefit this community. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on this subject? The audience is a little thin tonight, so I'm guessing that may be it. But anyone else? This is your opportunity for public hearing.
I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion to close the public hearing by Vols, second by Garrick. Calling the question on closing the public hearing. Public hearing is now closed. Council will now consider action on an application for $1 million to assist the city of North Platte in creating a rural workforce housing land development program and authorize the mayor to sign, submit, and execute all related documents.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the application for $1 million to assist the city of North Platte in creating a rural workforce housing land development program and authorize the mayor to sign, submit, and execute all related documents.
Second.
Motion by Lucas, second by Vols. Discussion on item number 10, please.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Lucas, go ahead.
I was wondering if Judy would maybe take a few minutes to walk through some of the nuts and bolts of how you foresee this working. I wanted to in particular understand how the title of the properties will work and how any repair work will be handled, and just maybe an example of a standard situation so I can understand when the city would be owning or not owning, or kind of who would be doing what on the project, on these types of houses.
Okay, I think I'm going to defer to Bill Trashinsky on the ins and outs of how you actually get that title. But to start out first, the city staff has already identified, and we've had this property resolution team together for a number of years. And we've always looked at properties that have been in disrepair and vacant, trying to get those to change. So we've got a lot of properties, and we've done a lot of research. I've got about 29 properties here that we're currently looking at that we are anticipating would be part of that project. But the first thing you do is identify them, do a review, see which ones would be available and be able to be eligible for this project. And then we would look at our city attorney to walk us through the steps of getting title for that. So I'll let him.
Councilman Lucas, so securing title on these properties, it depends on a lot of factors. And so the way that we would work through that is, number one, we have to look and find out who the record owner is. And so as we work through that process, a lot of times we already run into it with code violations and that type of thing, where the record owner has passed away or is absent, lives out of state. A lot of times we'll also find out that there are tax certificates that have been issued on these properties, and so there are a lot of delinquent taxes that are accruing, not being paid. That's a whole special set of circumstances that creates some difficulties and complications when trying to work through how to clear the legal title. Because of course, if the city works through trying to take care of these problem properties, the ultimate goal is to be able to sell them to somebody who's going to develop them. And so we want to be able to pass along clear title. And so it's really a very, I would say it could be a very complicated approach, just because there could be a lot of different facets that you have to investigate. But the ultimate goal is to just find out what types of liens are out there, who the owner is, and then try to approach a way in which the city could secure title. That could be through legal proceedings, that could be through tax certificates, it could be through negotiations with the property owner. And so I think with this type of program, what's nice from a legal perspective is that it would allow for a lot of different approaches to be able to get to that end result. Hopefully that helps answer some of that question.
So the first step would be to identify the properties. The second step would be to secure legal title to the property. Once you do that, you would have to kind of do an evaluation on the property to see what it is best suited for. There are some problem properties that could be rehabilitated with maybe minimal work. The majority of the properties, in my opinion, more than likely would have to be demolished. So then at that point, you would figure out a course of action. Is this one that's going to be able to be rehabilitated, or is this one that's going to be demolished? If it is demolished, then the city would work on hiring a contractor to demolish it, clear the site. We would then look at before we would demolish it, we would look at any environmental contaminants. The majority of these homes, I saw one of them that was built in 1900. So you know there's probably going to be some environmental issues. 1908, 1925, a lot of these homes were built back then. So you're going to have to look at lead-based paint if that's an issue, asbestos if that's an issue. So you have to do then after that, then you can get into either demolishing or setting it up for rehab. The city would then contract with somebody to demolish the property or get it ready for rehab, which might include boarding up windows, things like that, to get it in a position for rehab. Once the demolition is complete, the lot's cleared, at the same time we're going to be looking at replacing water connection, because one of the things in those old facilities, there may be a possibility that there's lead pipes, something like that. So the connection to the city services would be another thing that we would look at. Once that's completed and you have a vacant property or one that's ready for rehab, then you would go out for bid to a contractor. They would have certain guidelines that they'd have to meet, because we can't sell a property and then let them build a $2 million house on it. It has to be affordable. It has to fit the rural workforce housing development plan, which would be affordable housing. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head what the max is, but I think it's around 315 maybe. Okay, 375 would be the maximum dollar amount. We're hoping to target a little bit less than that so that we can get some affordable housing. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, how it would work.
So you are imagining situations where we may actually be trying to have the city construct some properties or reconstruct?
The city cannot, this money cannot be
Okay.
used for the city to do that. The city would have to sell the property and then
Okay.
be in a contract with whoever that contractor is to make sure that they meet the guidelines that they have to meet. But no, we cannot build that. The city cannot build that.
So we'd really be trying to clean the titles up, and so if we look at what we have today, this just gives us money versus what we have today, right? I mean, in other
Yes.
words, it's the tools we have today because we're not in a land bank. And so this basically gives us money we don't have to match that much to get, the match ratio is really high on this. And so it really gives us funding for what we are already kind of thinking about doing, right?
Yeah, I think that we have a program in place right now that's very, very similar,
Right.
but we only budget about $55,000 a year. $55,000 a year, if you go to purchase a property, probably isn't going to buy one.
Right.
With $55,000 a year, we maybe, maximum, can help with a demolition and with a property that a nonprofit has already secured. And so we don't get a lot done. This probably would put us, 5 to 10 years ahead of schedule, ahead of where we would be if we just continue to do what we're doing.
I would just add that Judy and I have been talking on and off about the land bank idea, for several years now. And the thing that continues to bother me about it is that it has a real administrative burden on it, in my opinion, where you have to team yourself up with another community. Potentially, it may be positive. And the vision on that probably has a little more of this construction mindset than I'm comfortable with in reconstruction. But it also has some unique access to funding potentially, and it has that ability to cleanse taxes and gain some of the taxes going forward, which are the huge positives of it. And so I think it's something we should continue to keep our eye on. I'm hoping at some point the administrative burden looks a little less on the land bank idea, and we can examine that a little bit further. But this would certainly increase the city's ability to get some of those lots cleared, which would be great.
Just to make a correction, the maximum on a rural workforce housing is 325, not 375.
So under that guideline, I'm sorry, Pete,
No.
under that guideline, does that mean if the city clears the lot, cleans the title, and sells somebody the vacant lot, they're gonna be restricted at that 325
Yes.
price? So those restrictions carry through to whoever buys it the first time from the city?
Yes, when they purchase that property, they will have to meet the standards in the rural workforce housing. So they will have to, they can't buy the property and put a quick stop on it. They can't buy the property and do anything other than affordable housing, which is gonna meet those regulations. So when they sign that contract to purchase it, that's what they're gonna be required to do.
In essence, that's a contract obligation that they're making as part of that. Okay.
Yes. And then the hope is that by selling these properties, that money can go back into this fund and we can set up a program to continue to reuse this. How much that'll be, I have no idea. It's gonna depend on what we get back, but hopefully that can carry us on into future years. Instead of 3 years and we're done, hopefully that'll be able to have a fund that we can continue to do that.
Do you know what, the value is of a clean lot in these areas of town that we're looking at?
Honestly,
What they're
it
selling for now?
Honestly, it really depends. I've seen lots purchased anywhere from 8,000 to 30 to 50,000 for a vacant lot. These in these particular areas probably are going to go closer to that, 7 to 12 area, which makes it a little bit easier for a contractor to, start out with that to make this $325,000 housing construction versus having to purchase a $30,000 lot and try to do the same thing.
So do you know what an estimated cost of demolition would be?
That's
I
gonna,
realize it depends on EPA and all that.
yeah, that's gonna vary a lot. We have gotten bids in the past from anywhere from $2,500 all the way up to $10,000 for demolition. It just really depends on if you end up with friable asbestos or non-friable asbestos, how you have to get rid of that, the size of the structure. If you have a 24 by 24 structure versus a 3,000 square foot structure, it's gonna be a lot different. So it can vary anywhere.
So to clean a lot off, if it needs to be cleaned up, and to sell it, we're already in the hole,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes, we will definitely be in the hole. This one in particular, we kind of estimated at around $65,000 to purchase it, to demolish it, with legal fees, we estimated around $65,000 probably. Yes, we're not gonna make a profit off of this.
So say it costs 65,000, so if a builder buys it for 7 to 12,000.
Okay.
And he puts a house on it that's gonna sell for 325,000. How much income does a person have to have? I know there's a ratio, Ty, you might be 1/3 of your income for a house payment or something like that, they say?
Yeah, normally for housing, people look at 25% of your gross income for housing expense.
So do you know what about that might be on this kind of a house?
Well, the other old rule of thumb is 2 to 3 times your annual income is what you can afford. Now, I think it's important in a couple things that, I don't mean to interrupt this conversation, but a couple things. Normally, households can generally afford between 2 times and 3 times their annual income in housing. But my understanding is that the 325 is just a maximum under the program. I can think of a number of scenarios where Habitat for Humanity has purchased $7,000 lots or $10,000 lots, or somebody's come in and put a much smaller home on those types of lots. And so I would project in this type of program that you may see some of those towards the upper end of the range, but you'll probably see a lot of activity in all price ranges. I'd also think that, to me, what's so exciting about this program is the problem that we've had for a long time is, okay, we're going to spend $65,000 of taxpayer money to turn around and sell a lot for $10,000. Well, how much of that do you want to do? But the difference here is we're taking $4 of the state's money and blowing it in $1 of ours, which we could argue all day about whether we believe our state taxpayer dollars, that that's a good idea or not. But the fact of the matter is the money's there, and they're trying to get this out to the communities quickly because they recognize this problem in the state. And so to me, what's so exciting about this is that 4-to-1 ratio, because you could easily see this in a 2-to-1, 1-to-1, 3-to-1 ratio. But to me, this is a pretty unique opportunity to where now all of a sudden spending $50,000 or $60,000 to sell that $10,000 lot may make way more financial sense than it ever would have in the past, because we have the ability to use the money that's been tagged for that in a 4-to-1 ratio roughly, and it'll replenish itself to the point where we should be able to thin that 4-to-1 ratio out even further, because it'll keep, hopefully replenishing back.
See, I had another question too. Oh, okay, so if the city gets an influx of 1 million people, I think people are going to, they're gonna know that that money's there, and they're not gonna do it for this cheap. They're gonna raise the prices.
That's why we negotiate. And that's why we look at ones that especially target those that have been abandoned, that have been vacant. But I think negotiation's going to be a big thing. And some of them we're going to get without needing to negotiate because they're already back on their taxes. So we're not going to go in and look at a property that somebody is going to ask us greater than the assessed cost of a property, because that's not going to be financially feasible. We're going to try and do what we can to get the most of these houses completed for the least amount of money.
I was thinking more along the labor of clearing the lot off and that sort of thing.
That's negotiation also. You don't have a lot of people that do demolition in North Platte, but we do have a really good working relationship with most of those contractors that do.
Other questions, Mr. Reeker?
I guess going along those lines, Judy, as I read through this, I thought that the city was gonna provide up to $85,000 of in-kind. Would that include then that instead of hiring a demolition company, that Lane would send one of the guys out with an excavator and a dump truck and pull it to the landfill, or?
I guess we'll have to negotiate that as we go. But no, a lot of those in-kind services are going to be my services. They're going to be lead-based inspections. They're going to be inspections, maybe some engineering things that we can do in-house will be a lot of that. And my guess is the in-kind services are going to come out to more than $85,000, because it takes a lot of time to look at these houses, get them identified, try and figure out what we can or can't do with them, try and figure out if we need to do lead-based paint testing, if we need to do asbestos remediation, if there's any other thing like that. So there will be a lot of city staff time. I doubt that we go as far as having, public service go over and demolish a building. I doubt that we will be able to do that. I just don't think we have the time and resources. But, I mean, we're up for whatever it takes. We just think it's a great program.
You mentioned in your earlier part of the discussion about having a paved street. Is that one of the prerequisites for demolition?
No, it's not a prerequisite. It's not required that they have a paved street. Improvements, and some of those improvements, we do have some non-paved streets, and some of these homes may be located on those non-paved areas. It would be nice if they were in areas that had paved streets, but I'm sure we're going to run into some that aren't. But they just have to be city-improved roads, and gravel roads or dirt roads do count as city-improved roads.
I'm not really excited about it. I'm trying to figure out how we're going to determine which properties are ripe for basically government takeover.
There's a lot of ways to do that. Some of them, we've already got a list that have been on our property resolution list for 725 days. Those are because they are non-compliant with trash, junk, mowing, non-compliant with, maybe they have windows broken out, things like that. Maybe they're being used for storage, those types of things. The other thing that we're going to look at is the ones that we feel would maybe be easier to get title to. And again, I can probably defer to Bill, but somebody who's back on back taxes may be easier than somebody who is a current owner that really doesn't want to participate in the program. So those are the types of things that we're going to focus on. But we've done a lot of research. I have a set of about 25 homes or 28 homes that we've already looked at just from standing on the street corner and doing some research there. But yeah, we're going to definitely prioritize them in the ones that we feel are going to be an easier. You know, the first ones we're going to do are going to be the easier ones. We're going to leave the hard ones for last. At least that's the way I would do it.
So am I understanding correctly then that, you said those that are gonna work voluntarily? What about somebody that isn't willing to work voluntarily? In other words, they've paid their taxes, the windows aren't broken, nobody's lived there. Are we gonna go after those properties too?
More than likely, if they're vacant properties that don't have any compliance issues, probably not. That's probably not going to be high on our priority list. We focus
may
on the
be an
ones that, what was that?
But that may be an option?
It may be an option, but that's not going to be high on our priority list. The ones that we're going to look at are the ones that are definitely have code compliance issues. The structure's falling down, the structure's going to fall down, things like that. We're not going to look at the ones, if there's a property owner that has a vacant property and it hasn't had any code compliance issues, that's not going to be number one priority.
Who's gonna develop the program?
City staff, we have a lot of guidelines that are coming from the Department of Economic Development as what you have to meet. But so far, it's been just a combination effort with the city attorney, city administrator, the mayor's been in on several meetings. We've talked with DevCo, Gary's been in on a couple of meetings.
Who's that?
Gary Pearson, he's been in on a couple of meetings with us, the city engineer, myself, Dave Hahn. So it's a combination of a lot of people that will develop the program.
Donna?
Thank you. So I don't remember for sure when it was, a year and a half ago maybe, that we talked about enforcing some of the zoning requirements with some of the housing here in town. Whatever happened to that?
We do that on a daily basis. We enforce zoning, we enforce code compliance all the time, but it's slow. And a lot of reasons that it's slow is because we don't have the money backing it, because there are certain things that we could do if we had the money and the time to do it. It's just like getting legal title to properties. Very difficult to do if you don't have the time and resources behind it. But yes, we continue to do that, and that is where this will help. Because this right now, if we could get rid of all 29 of these properties, I would have 29 less phone calls a day.
So it's my understanding, and Mr. Tuzinski can tell, it can take up to 5 to 6 years. I mean, it can take a long time to get through the court system, to get a clear title on some properties that might be a little encumbered. And
I would say 5 to 6 years is probably, that would be an extreme amount of time. And it all depends on what the exact nature of the, situation is. But to Mr. Reeker's point too, if you run into a property owner who does not want to voluntarily sell the property, they're current on their taxes, they don't have code enforcement, the government, including the city, can't just take property from a private owner. There would have to be a condemnation action, you'd have to have a justification for condemning the property. That's where our court system comes into play, and the court system is obviously there to protect everyone's rights, both the city's rights and what the city can legally do, but also the private property owner's rights. But I wouldn't say 5 to 6 years would, unless there are some really unforeseen circumstances. But the properties that we are looking at addressing are the ones initially that we can quickly get off of the list, and we want to be able to, if we can get these grant monies, we want to be able to show some quick progress. And so we're not going to be looking at properties or projects that are going to take 5 to 6 years. That probably wouldn't be a very good use of the city's time and resources if we, and that's part of the reason why we have this list, why we're looking into these issues. It's, from my perspective, it's pretty easy to tell if we're going to run into some major roadblocks in trying to secure legal title, or whether we're going to be able to move ahead and we may have a property owner that may be interested in unloading the property. Because keeping in mind, a lot of these that are on the list have back taxes, things like that. I can talk to you for a while about the tax certificate process if you ever have trouble falling asleep, but with those types of properties, you know, generally you have people that are investing in these tax certificates that may end up with the property ultimately, and they don't want a property like the ones that we're talking about. And so we're hopeful that, you know, some of the properties aren't at the point where someone can secure like a tax deed or anything like that, but you know, 6 months, 9 months out, that's going to be a different story. So a lot of it is timing, but to your point, Councilwoman Tryon, I don't think 5 to 6 years that's not the types of properties that we're going to be looking at, especially initially.
So in negotiating this, within the city pay those liens, tax liens, if that was the case, if there was, I mean, how does that square away?
Well, the only way to clear off a lien for taxes is to get the taxes paid somehow. So that's where some of the grant money may come in, is paying off the back taxes to clear the lien, to free up the title to be able to sell it free and clear to someone. So that's a possibility, you know, again, on a case-by-case basis, but that could be something we could look at. And again, that's what the grant funds would be used for. It would be clearing up those types of issues.
So how would the city approach these people? Letter? Knock, knock? Chase them down?
Yeah, again, generally it's going to be a letter, but you know, it's hard to say for sure. Generally by a letter, because as we mentioned, some are out of state or absent property owners. Some may be deceased, and so you know, part of it is trying to determine exactly who to contact. But I would say yes, generally by letter. Some of them, I forget whose question it was, but some of these properties we're fairly familiar with because I think it was your question, Donna, about the zoning enforcement. You know, I've spent a significant amount of my time in court prosecuting those types of cases. And, you know, so we've become familiar with property owners that way, or at least with property owners that are out of state, absent, or deceased. So, you know, we have a little bit of direction with some of these properties just from those types of procedures.
So was there good luck in enforcing the zoning? I guess what I'm getting at is I'd kind of like to go that way than this way. To enforce the zoning, was there,
I will tell you that we continually have the same properties on that list for zoning violations. We're dealing with the same people. And we're either looking at having to increase the fines, and that could be something that we bring to council, or approaching it in different ways to put more pressure on people to keep their properties cleaned up. But if you want my opinion, I don't think that's the way to go. I think grant money that's available to us that somebody else is going to get if we don't go after it is a much better avenue to approach it.
Mayor Keller, I think the one thing that Judy alluded to this, part of the problem is here is the neighbors. You know, it's not just properties sitting there, but we're getting complaints regularly from neighbors wanting the city to do something. Now, if you want to handle that problem, you take the phone calls. Anybody didn't want to do this, then you guys can take the phone calls. What the city has to take on getting this problem solved. But it's more than just, you know, government. There's a problem here in town. You drive around town, you see these properties, and the neighbors are getting upset about it. That's why Judy's here. And I think it's incumbent upon us to do something about it. I mean, how would you feel to have a property like that next to you and you can't do anything? And you contact the city and they can't do anything. You get some people very unhappy. So I think we got to approach it that way too. You know, this isn't just a deal on getting money from the state. You got people who own property. You have a right to have a decent neighborhood to live in. And there's nothing worse to have a property next to you that, you know, is not maintained, probably has rats, you know, whatever is involved in these things. That's what we're dealing here. That's what the issue is. Getting these properties cleaned up and then plus get them back on the tax rolls. Okay?
Lane?
If I could, as Judy mentioned, we have the property maintenance team that we've been working on a lot of these for a number of years, and Ty's been in a lot of those meetings. And there's a number of properties through our process, I don't know, probably 40 or 50 that we've gotten taken care of through that. So we've taken action where they voluntarily then, because of action, taken care of it. But there's a number of properties that probably many on this list that have, you know, two plus years where we've been dealing with them and not made any any noticeable impact. And so this is just another tool to help us. We love it when we can talk with the property owner, give them some resources, and they take care of it on their own. But there's some, like you said, there's a number of them that we're going on 2 years of a lot of city staff time that nothing's happened. This is just a tool to help us take care of those properties more than anything else. And so, you know, we'll continue our steps that we're doing where we're working with property owners and they're going through the processes and they're taking care of them themselves. But this is for those properties that continue to be on the list.
Mr. Lucas?
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that. I've been the council representative for a while on the property resolution team, and I probably haven't done a very good job of communicating with you guys about all of the successes in that. It's been really interesting because that team obviously has city staff, and I'm in the meetings. I think the mayor's generally in the meetings, and then you have other people from different parts of the community that are providing either information or access to different programs, ideas, learning, trying to bring information to the group. And so what I've seen occurring is, first of all, I've been amazed at how well the city knows the properties. The city staff knows these properties. You can't believe in detail. I mean, Judy could probably, if you gave her 25 addresses right now, she'd say, oh yeah, that one's this, that. I mean, and that's staff-wide. They really know these properties. They also have a pretty good understanding of the people involved with them and what their situation is. And a lot of that is helped by having that network of people on the team that can provide information about properties and different things. Then they're working on, okay, what properties can we resolve? Which ones have rodents and other things that are bothering neighbors? What are significant issues? What do we have the resources to do? And then what are the ones that we can fix? How can we fix the worst problem the quickest with the lowest amount of resources? And they haven't had a lot of money to deal with these, and which would give them some funding. And so I would tell you from seeing it firsthand, first of all, since this initiative has started, the enforcement of code-related items on housing has increased immensely. And not only is that solved, I mean, to this, I don't know how many of you guys have deemed as solved at this point since this group started. Is it in the 50s? 40s? I'm trying to remember. Is it that high yet?
I don't know that it's that high, but it's getting pretty close.
It's a significant number that have been solved, but it's also sending a good message to the community that, you know, we're working on this and you need to stay in code, and you can't have rats running across the property, the neighbors, and bothering them like Mr. Nisley talked about. And so, like I said, I've probably done a poor job of telling you guys about what I've been able to see within this group, because I bet there's been more accomplished in this area in the last couple of years than there probably was the 20 prior. And so I'm excited for the potential for funding on this.
Okay, I have one more question.
Oh, hold on. Just a second. Mr. Woods, go ahead.
Okay. On taxes, if they're owed to the city, is it, I heard somebody say that the funds could be used to pay them, so the city's not out the taxes. Is the city able to just forgive them also?
I'm going to defer to the city attorney on that one.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, the city has no say in it, and that's part of the tax certificate process. That revenue is still coming into the city because a private investor purchases the tax certificate, pays the taxes, and so it's still accruing as a lien on the property, and so the city still gets the tax revenue. That's the whole purpose of the tax certificate process, is so that the revenue is still coming into the taxing entities. So what we're trying to do is clear off that lien that private investor then has on the property for paying the taxes for the property owner. And so, you know, the other thing to think of with this project is that we're talking about projects that are pretty severely dilapidated, where there's pretty minimal tax revenue coming in. We're talking about getting them fixed up back on the tax rolls on a higher level to bring in additional tax revenue for the city. So, you know, it's a win-win-win for everyone.
Okay. The first thing I gotta tell you is, in full disclosure, I'm pretty sure I have a property on this list. I'm wondering why we weren't given Exhibit 2 so we could look at the addresses. The map is really hard to read. And, were the property owners notified of this
Probably
hearing?
not of this project. A lot of the property owners would have had code compliance issues, so they probably knew that they've been, being talked about or things like that. Some of them, no. But these, and just because these few properties we've selected, we've put on pictures, that does not necessarily mean, by God, that's gonna be one of the properties on there. Because it may come that property, for some reason here or there, may not be able to participate in this program, or it may not be feasible to do it. There may be, too much cost involved or something like that. So, no. Exhibit 2, I do have a copy of it, if you'd like to see it. I
Yeah, I
didn't
would like to
attach
get
that,
one
but yeah,
afterwards.
I can get you a copy of it.
Okay. None of this million could go to the developer, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And they would, once you have them done and they're ready, would they be auctioned off, the properties?
That is something that I guess we haven't really discussed how to do that, but they would be sold, whether they would be auctioned, sent out for bid. I guess I'm not sure what the process would be. We didn't really discuss that, I guess, while we were going through that. But yes, they would be up for sale.
Seems to me that a regular real estate auction would be the best way to get the most money for the city. But would the developer be eligible for TIF funds or rural workforce housing funds?
There are some regulations on that. Tax increment financing, boy, I'd have to check into that. I can't really speak to that, whether they would be eligible to apply for that. There are some funding options that I'm sure they would have access to. For example, if Lincoln County CDC happened to purchase one of the properties, they then would use their funding sources, which come from NIFA, which come from home funds, things like that. Same thing with Habitat. They would still be eligible to use those types of funds, but I will have to check into those others to see if it cuts them out.
Okay.
I do not know that answer. I apologize.
Okay. Could I ask Gary a quick? Well, no, I can't. I'll ask you. Maybe you know. I don't want to make him get up. What about shot in the arm?
Would they be eligible for
Yeah,
that?
for shot in the arm.
Gary?
Sorry, Gary. But I had to ask him while I was thinking about it.
They would if the program still had money.
Okay.
Our programs are committed right now, all our funds.
Okay.
And we chose not to go forward with an application this year with rural workforce housing funds because we wanted to support the city's efforts on this because we felt that's another critical component of addressing housing. But those programs have been really successful, and yes, in normal circumstances, if we had the funds, they would be absolutely eligible for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
I think, Mark, in answer to your question, I think TIF probably would have limited use on these because they have access to the utilities, the infrastructure. Whether it's the street, the sewer, and the water, I mean, it's there.
You're right. It would be micro TIF.
It'd have to be
I
micro,
asked
it'd be growing macro
wrongly,
TIF
yes.
that might apply.
Micro TIF
Yeah.
is what I should have said.
Yeah.
And
But
I
yeah,
assume they would be.
I would almost assume they would be, but I would
don't
have
know
to
how
take a
you
look
could
at that and
deny
see.
it to 'em.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll probably, I might get a question in here, but I'd just like to make some statements. First, the least important one. If you haven't owned houses, I own several houses that are vacant and have been vacant for many years. I don't have rats or mice. They won't stay in a place where there's nothing to eat. Okay, so, back in the late 80s, early 90s, housing, there was junk houses everywhere. And I knew a guy, he came here from Iowa, brought 200 grand, bought houses for 2,000, 4,000, made rental properties out of them. You know, and I know lots of people that do that now, and they do it on their own, you know. Since we have all these government programs, it's getting harder and harder to do that, and I kind of think that's the reason why, is because the money's there. It drives up the price. I look at houses now that are garbage that I used to buy for, you know, $12,000, $15,000, and they want $40,000 and $50,000 for them now. Well, there's so much money out there that, you know, that's what's driving up the price. And I know it sounds like this will help, but I don't think it will. The one I own that you guys have on the list is, this is just an example of what it'll do to me. I use it as a warehouse. It's on a light industrial lot, so that is a permitted use, to my understanding. Now, I don't think I have any complaints on it. I've gotten a letter or two because my grandkids didn't get over there to mow it in time, you know. But I keep it clean. You know, I go around, pick up the trash. There's nothing outside. All my stuff's stored inside. Is the house ugly? Oh, yes. Yes, it would probably be in, I don't know, top 10. But, you know, I use it as a business property. If I have to get rid of it and go build a warehouse or rent warehouse space, that takes away that much money that I could use to rehabilitate houses, which is basically my only job now, and which I've been doing off and on for over 20 years. The tax money that's taken from me to sponsor these programs is money I could use to do this. We're going to have over, what, from what I read, $2 billion in surplus. You know, I believe government should have a surplus, but this is ridiculous. If this money was left in our pockets, we would have it to do these things, and we wouldn't need the government programs. I think that's about it.
Donna?
We have time for a couple more here. Is the city, who's going to monitor the money coming in and going out and all this? Is this the city's job's gonna do this?
Yes.
The bookkeeping?
Yes.
We have staff already hired to do that, and they have time to do that, and
That's a loaded question. Do we have staff that's able to do it? Yes. Do we have time to do it? I'm going to say probably not, but we'll make the time to do it.
okay,
It's a very important project.
exactly. And I have to agree with what Mark is saying. This government influx of money, and not just this program, but government in general, it really throws a little monkey wrench in the free market. Anybody who wants to just go out and do what they want to do on their own, they have to compete with the government being involved over here, which to me seems kind of unfair. And I know not everybody shares that, but to me, hang on.
I disagree wholeheartedly. These are properties that are just gonna sit there and do nothing. The free market isn't working. That's why they're there.
That's because government's already been
Well,
involved.
now, wait a second.
Hold on,
That's
hold on, hold on.
probably-
We could have that debate and go on forever, but I mean, it's just because they're gonna sit there. That's what the problem, you gotta do something. You two choices, do nothing, do something.
Hey, I have a third.
n-
If the lots are cleaned off and they don't sell right away, with the prices and the inflation we have coming at us, let's have community gardens. Tongue in cheek maybe, but you know what, there might be something to that.
I don't think that's an allowed use once we clear them. New structures
leave
have to be,
something
new structures have to be built. New or rehabilitated structures have to be built to meet those program guidelines. But back to the other question, I think that's why these funds were created. Free market is not taking care of these properties. Somebody will not go in and purchase a property that is going to cost them $60,000 to demolish so that they can start over. It's not going to happen. So without the funding that the government is giving us, these buildings will sit here. One of them was built in 1900. It will continue to sit there because nobody's going to go in, spend $60,000 on purchasing a lot, tearing it down, so that they can turn around and rebuild something on it. It's not gonna happen.
Go ahead, Mark.
I have a question, Judy. You know, if this goes through and you're demolishing it, by code, is it possible, if the foundation is in good shape, to leave it so that, you know, you could build on the existing footprint?
I'm going to say yes, because part of this program is rehab. So if it is if there is an ability, if it makes cost-effective sense to do that, then yes, I could say that that could be a possibility. The chances probably are pretty slim with that, but
You'd about
yeah,
have to
there's
have a
definitely a
buyer
possibility.
who could do it.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Lucas?
Yeah, I would just add, in my profession here over the last 21 years that I've worked here, I've worked with a lot of people, like you referred to, Mark, over the years. Buying dilapidated houses cheap, fixing them up and turning them into rental properties or flipping them has been a good business in this town for a long time. Very good. And there's been a lot of really good things done, and I know Mark's done a lot of great things with a lot of properties too, and a lot of others have as well. What we're talking about here are properties that have significant negative economic value. Properties that nobody's going to give $2,000 for because it's going to cost them $30,000 or $40,000 to get to 10, and the costs are the legal costs, the back taxes, which could be potentially addressed in a land bank situation, but we're not prepared to do that at this point. And so you're talking about legal, you're talking about taxes, you're talking about demolition, and then you're talking about abatement of any environmental issues, and those are your big costs. And those can be $30,000 or $40,000 or $50,000, $60,000 on a lot that's going to have a $10,000 value. Now, the market will gobble up. There's plenty of people in this community that are good at it, and they'll gobble them up if it makes any economic sense. If that value, to me, if that value's $1 over zero, the city shouldn't be messing with this. But to me, it's the ones that have significant negative economic value that there's just not another good way to fix. And so I don't feel like, you know, that this harms the person who's out there. Again, I'm actually hoping it helps the person that, Mark, that you're referring to that looks to buy these, because the city's going to be trying to get them to the point where they have a little economic value, and it should create more supply, because the thing I hear over and over again is that we don't have many of these in the community that you can buy at a reasonable price and fix up and do what people have done for a lot of years. So I'm really excited about it.
Okay, calling the question on item number 10. Item number 10 is passed. Item number 11, approve the claims.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the claims.
Second.
Motion by Reeker, second by Lucas to approve the claims. Calling the question on approving the claims. The claims are approved. Respect our city employees and request that any complaints or criticisms of employees not be aired in the public meeting. Concerns about employees should be brought to the attention of the city administrator or the mayor. Individuals in violation will be called out of order. Do we have any public agenda request items from the public? It would not appear that we're going to have anybody come up and say that. We do have a couple informational items tonight. Lane, tell us about snow.
Here we go. So we're, been preparing for, well, actually since this weekend when they started telling us what the storm was possibly gonna bring. So we declared the emergency at 6 o'clock about 5:30 this evening. Crews will probably start putting down salt within the next hour or two. And then once it starts snowing, we're planning on a little bit after midnight having more crews come in, and we'll start, plowing the snow routes when there's 3 or 4 inches of snow on there. And it'll probably take multiple passes if we have that kind of snow, but we're gonna try to stay ahead of it instead of pushing a foot or two of snow. We're gonna hopefully push 3 or 4 inches at a time and just continue on that. But there's gonna be some long hours for the crews, and then, could be a number of days because it's, if we get the kind of snow we're talking about. But that's the preparation. We have more than just a street crew, that we're gonna have some people from sanitation, from electric, from water, from sewer, all working together to try and move the snow as quickly as we can with the equipment that we have. So that's the plan as as we can best prepare for the snow they're talking right now. But it is going to take time, and it's gonna take numerous passes, and so there'll probably be those times when we've gone past and somebody goes and does their driveway and a few more inches of snow comes, and we're gonna go past again, it's gonna go right back in the driveway.
Such is the nature of snow removal, unfortunately. Also, just one quick announcement. During our last meeting, we had, or not this meeting, but the prior meeting, we had quite a discussion on how to adjust ordinances and things like that. So at a future work session, we will talk through what that process is supposed to look like. That being said, Mr. Reeker.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn and go get ready to shovel snow.
Second.
Motion by Reeker, second by Vols, calling the question on adjournment. Meeting is adjourned. Have a nice one, everyone.
I'm gonna take some heart medicine, just in
Yeah.
case.
Yeah, keep it in your mouth. Oh, thank